This time, we're taking a look at the post-apocalyptic buddy cop film Dredd. And along the way we ask, is Dredd pretty much a Mandalorian? How can a British comic nail American culture? And is slow-mo really that bad of a drug? Only one thing fighting for order in the chaos. Force-fed sci-fi. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Force-Fed Sci-Fi Podcast. My name is Chris Rupp, and I am joined by my friend and co-host,
Judge Sean Michael Culp.
Do you really think you would make a good judge, Sean?
I don't know. I think so. I think if I had to and I lived in this society where it's very black and white, and they're like, Sean, you either are a drug dealer or a judge, I would probably go with the judge. Seems a little bit more fun. You know, you get the challenge of the day-to-day. You might die the first week on the job.
Yeah, what was that horrible statistic Dredd said to Anderson? Like 1 out of every 5 rookies dies on their first day? Like, what the hell?
Dude, 80% survival rate first day. That's just, talk about an epic job. Very much. They have to have like PTSD like support groups for all the former judges, you know? They're probably like all Vietnam, World War II vets.
Right, they have to. Like there's got to be some type of, you know, self-medication program or therapy program exclusively for former judges.
It's an intense gig. So, yeah. You know, before we go down the rabbit hole of the judge, let's explain this with a synopsis. What is Judge Dredd? Take it away, Chris.
All right, so in the future, the United States is this, they call it an irradiated wasteland. And the justice system has been consolidated into what are known as the judges. They're a group of law enforcement officers who dispense justice at a moment's notice. Either they execute criminals on the spot or they put them in what they call ISO cubes for jail or whatever. And the most badass of these judges is Dredd. And while Dredd is out on assignment with a rookie judge, they become trapped under the threat of a powerful crime queen, and now they must fight through hordes of criminals and henchmen just to make it through another day. So it is tight, it is action-packed, and it is begging for a more in-depth analysis.
And that's where we come in.
Exactly.
Very nice. I don't think you could ever be clearer than that. It's perfect.
So Dredd is directed by Pete Travis, and to be honest, his career as a director has been kind of thin. He had previously directed the film Vantage Point, which I think was about a political assassination that was trying to be deconstructed through a bunch of like television and handheld cameras and stuff.
Yeah.
And more recently, he directed a miniseries for the History Channel called Project Blue Book, which was about the United States Air Force's secret investigation into UFO phenomena.
Ooh, that sounds kind of cool. I guess people would enjoy it now that the Pentagon or something admitted there's UFOs, right? Wasn't that like last week? They showed pictures and they're like, we don't know what these objects are.
I think they released footage, but UFO doesn't exactly identify anything as an alien spacecraft. All that really means is like there's something in the sky that's up there, and at the moment we are unable to identify what it means. It doesn't exactly mean, oh, there's alien spacecraft. For all we know, it's a weather balloon or something.
A very quick weather balloon, yes. Yes.
Yeah, so anybody who's saying like, oh, the Pentagon said UFOs exist. Okay, hold on. They said UFOs exist. They didn't say aliens exist.
Exactly.
So your roll.
This is either aliens or a very quick weather balloon or maybe some douchebag that built their own spacecraft or aircraft and can elude the jets of the Air Force, which, you know, it is the Army or the military. And so take that with a grain, you know.
Yeah, or some flat earther moron who wants to build his own rocket to prove that the Earth is actually flat and doesn't curve. It could be a whole bunch of things.
So Pete Travis, everyone, he didn't have that big of a career. He did write that the movie The Gunman, I know, with Sean Penn. It came out a couple years ago.
I haven't seen that yet, and like you were saying, he's not really, you know, doesn't have the same filmography and career that other sci-fi directors have. And I think he's definitely overshadowed more so now than by his writer and producer on Dredd, Alex Garland. Yeah, Alex Garland is huge in the world of science fiction. He wrote the film 28 Days Later. He also wrote Sunshine. He's also directed Annihilation from several years ago, as well as more recently he created the FX series Devs, which was released to pretty much near universal acclaim.
Yeah. And that guy, he directed Ex Machina, which is like hailed as one of the best sci-fi films in the last decade to come out.
Exactly.
Which, you know, that's not bad, right?
Always good when one of your films can be called any sort of benchmark for any genre.
Yes. So maybe Alex Garland was he sold it. Maybe he was kind of the piece to the puzzle that got this puppy off the ground.
You know, it's possible. I mean, it's likely that he was in pre-production on Ex Machina and couldn't commit to directing Dredd, so he calls up Pete Travis and asked him if he wanted to take on the director's chair. From what I also read, Duncan Jones was also offered the chance to direct this film, but passed on it for some reason. That's not clear.
Right. I mean, because I think Alex Garland wrote the screenplay for this too. And it's like, if he's that good of a director, maybe the guy didn't even need to direct, you know? It was that good. But we'll never know. Can we, let's explain. Do you want to explain a little bit for this character, where it came from? Because this isn't the first one. This is actually, it's not a remake. It's more like a reboot of Dredd.
Yeah, so Dredd, the character, began life in a British sci-fi comic series. It's called 2000 AD, and Dredd is easily the most popular character to have emerged from this series, and he's been going on for a long time. His first appearance was in March of 1977, and there's been all kinds of different storylines with the character. There's been a version where Dredd is undead. I think they like the alliteration sounds there. Also, Dredd has to a storyline where Dredd has to explore beyond the walls of Mega City 1 and runs into a bunch of mutant gangs. So the comics themselves are very interesting. Yeah, so it's so he has the very bombastic, very militaristic style looking uniform. He has the helmet that he never takes off. But like you said, this is not the first attempt to bring Judge Dredd to the big screen.
No.
There was...
They made a movie
there was
in the 90s with our friend Sylvester Stallone. And oh God, that movie, it's doo-doo stew for anyone. I'm sure we're going to have to review it on here one of these days, unfortunately. But that film was just so bad.
That film is a hot mess. In 1995, it was budgeted at $90 million and only grossed $113.5 million.
And not to go off too of a tangent, because we will discuss it in depth once Major Sam draws it. But oh man, like it's typical Sylvester Stallone in the 90s, wanting every film to be just about him and his acting chops. And it's bad. It's really bad.
Well, and when we do a more in-depth review of Dredd, Judge Dredd, we'll certainly cover that. But it received a lot of criticism from the fans of the character and the creators of the character themselves. They criticized Stallone's portrayal. They hated the fact that he took off his helmet all the time, and it was just not a very faithful adaptation to the source material.
No. Because they took a comic book that should have been, it's very brutal, and a movie that should have been R-rated, like the one that we watched recently. And Stallone's like, I need a family-friendly comedy. You need to see my face all the time. It's like, no, what? No, what are you doing? Stop. It's Stallone, man. Thank God Stallone's mellowed with the years, or he just makes his own movies now. So...
Well, this is still also in the age of nobody really cared about doing a faithful adaptation of anything.
No.
It was just, the main concern was just putting butts in seats and taking their money. And there wasn't any thought given to the fans or putting a decent product on screen. I mean, I think we all know the Super Mario Brothers movie was just a colossal disaster.
Oh, it's terrible. That would be that would be a terrible. I would say if you want to watch a bad movie, that would be my force-fed sci-fi movie recommendation of the week. Watch the Super Mario Bros. Adaptation. I think it's the first of a video game adaptation, one of the first ever in the 80s, and oh boy, it's bad. And it's Bob Hoskins too.
It's just there were so many bad comic book and video game adaptations for the longest of times. Really, the only good films that were out there that were adaptations were probably the very first Superman film, directed by Richard Donner, and then later on Sam Raimi started doing the Spider-Man films, and those were fantastic. Those still hold up pretty well. But there was a solid, almost 30-year gap where we got decent adaptations, and now decent comic book and video game adaptations are slowly becoming the norm because people are understanding how to actually put the source material on screen and do it in an entertaining and good way.
Oh yeah, and they're just, especially now, comic book movies are still more aimed towards children, and I think if you can make a solid film that is aimed towards kids, you don't have to worry so much about trying to convince the producers that this R-rated film is going to gross and resonate with teenagers and adults. I mean, sometimes it works. We saw X-Men build up to Logan with Hugh Jackman playing the Wolverine, but that was so engrossed and it took so long, and you're not always going to get that. So I think like how Marvel is right now, we're good. They're movies for kids, and they put butts in seats. They're faithful. What is it, Feige? That's the guy that produces it. He does a hell of a job mapping out the road for this. But unfortunately, Dredd, which is a comic book movie, why it did not do well in the 90s at all.
No, I don't think people were ready for the original iteration of Judge Dredd because there wasn't much of a familiarity with 2000 AD and with the original character. So people see Sylvester Stallone on screen, wearing this helmet that he has to wear half through most of the film, and the action is weird, and the attitudes and the atmosphere in the comic are very foreign to American audiences. So there's a lot of decent explanation as to why the original film didn't work out. But then we flash forward 13 or so years later, we have Alex Garland working on a script. Pete Travis is announced as a director. And then in one of the more brilliant moves, Carl Urban is confirmed to play Dredd at San Diego Comic-Con in 2010.
Yes, he is. Carl Urban, folks. In this, I don't know. I would say this might be Carl Urban's last really sole leading role that he's done in a while, if I'm correct. Because he's known, Carl Urban, for some people, because I know when I watched this with my mom, and she couldn't remember who the guy was. And I said, the dude that played, he was Emor or whatever. Yeah, whatever. He was in Lord of the Rings, guys. He was the dude that rode the horse with the long blonde hair. And that was like kind of Carl Urban blew up. I remember the early 2000s, like with the Lord of the Rings. Then he was in Chronicles of Riddick, The Bourne Supremacy, Doom. And then he kind of fell off until he got into Star Trek again, where he plays Bones, Leonard McCoy. But recently, after Dredd, he's kind of just taken more like bit roles. He hasn't been a leading man, I don't think, since this. Or at least in something that's gross.
One of the things you pointed out about all those films, and you'll realize this once I point it out, is all those films you mentioned are pretty much ensemble films.
Yeah.
And I think the thing to note about Carl Urban is he's great in a leading role if it's absolutely perfect for him, and Dredd is perfect for him, but he's also fantastic in ensemble films, which is why we Carl Urban, I'm sure he's a fantastic actor, but for some reason he's just much better in those ensemble films than he is as a leading man solo actor.
Yeah, he always seems to be pigeonholed. If he is the leading man, he always has to do an action film where, kind of like with Dredd, where it's Dirty Harry-esque and he talks in a deep voice. But when he does things like Star Trek or Avengers films, he plays more character roles where you actually get to see his acting chops a little bit. I don't know why, but I don't think he's terrible. He did great in this film.
No, I mean, it helps that a lot of the character development is moved elsewhere to, like to Anderson, to Mama slightly. But again, he's also surrounded by a very decent cast in Dredd. We've got Olivia Thirlby as Anderson, Lena Headey as Mama, Wood Harris as Kay, and also Donald Gleason plays the blind tech junkie. So again, this is another film Carl Urban has a very good cast he's working with.
I think that's probably, this is just such a tight film, and it has to, my praise goes to the director, writers, and all the actors. It's so well executed directionally. It tells you what the characters are, it establishes relationships really quick, but it's just enough. You know, they don't spend too much time dilly-dallying over exposition, his past, or anything. Even when he meets Anderson, she tries to see and find out who Dredd is. And she says, I think, something, his insides are clenched, and he lives by this moral code of right and wrong, but there's something deeper in there that he's not ready to let go. And then the lady cuts her off and says, nope, that's it. We don't need to know anything else about Dredd. We figured out, we established him. Boom. You don't need to go down the meta rabbit hole.
Well, even during the comics, Dredd is a fairly static character. He doesn't exactly go through any type of profound change, or we don't feel like he's learned any sort of lesson. He's still very much the same person throughout the storylines. He's this badass black and white judge who's going to accomplish his mission.
Yeah, that's his sole purpose, and he does as a character. I have never read the comics, so I don't know, but I know they were written by a British guy. I think, what was his name? It's John Wagner, and then like Carlos Izquierda, and so I know it's British, but I don't think it's alt-right or anything, correct? Because it's very, this film is very police-oriented, because like you said in the synopsis, basically the world's confined to like 800 million people in big metropolis cities surrounded by walls, and it's just good, bad. There's the judges that kill people, and then it's a bunch of poor and a bunch of rich, and that's it. But it doesn't feel... I don't know. This film was 8 years old. I didn't get alt-right. I got more criticisms and critiques of police, and more so about like homelessness and politics.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think when the original source material was written, we saw this mass migration towards more of like an activist culture, with, protests in the streets and people. I mean, we're still coming out of the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal, so political mistrust is probably at an all-time high in the late 70s, and we see police clashing with protesters, punk music really starting to come into the forefront. So what's the answer for that? Well, it's an ultra tough, fascist-looking police officer that dispenses justice at a moment's notice.
Yes. Everything wrong with the culture. That's so fascinating that the creator, Wagner, decided, you know what, this is what we're going to go with to show how we disapprove with what's going on in the government. This is what they want.
Well, a lot of it came from the drawer, Carlos Ezquerra. He grew up in Spain at the time under a fascist dictator.
Oh, there you go.
A lot of the influences in Dredd's original costume, with the eagles and the helmet and just the overall look of the character, are heavily influenced by the imagery of fascist troops from his childhood.
Oh yeah, he looks like a Nazi, essentially, with the eagles and everything. It's so that's like the first thing you notice when you see the judge headquarters, this giant eagle. It's like, what? Oh my gosh, is this Nazis? Are these guys Nazis?
Well, yeah, the symbolism of the eagle. I mean, yes, it's in America we associate the eagle with freedom and the American spirit, but the eagle has been a fascist symbol going as far back as the Roman Empire for thousands of years. So it's a very weird juxtaposition the eagle has in terms of its symbolism.
Right? It makes me wonder if the eagle with Dredd's, the headquarters and everything, if that has anything to do with like America. If there's any correlation or if any of this is a critique in a way of the United States. I think
it is because, I mean, the United States, nobody calls it the United States. I mean, this is now known as the Cursed Earth. Mm-hmm. No one has any sort of civic pride or patriotism. And I think them using the eagle is sort of this way of trying to hold on to what the past used to be and the promise of America.
Believe the eagle, fight for freedom, black and white.
Believe in the eagle, believe in the judges. And it's also rare that we see this type of post-apocalyptic film that not only suggests a total breakdown of society, but also the complete reorganization of it.
Oh, everyone being migrated to these homes, like the city, these giant towers, skyscrapers that just hold. I compared it to, in Chicago, Capri Green, essentially. That's like what this world is. If we just had a bunch of Sears towers everywhere, and that was just filled with apartment complexes, super malls, skate parks, that's where all people would be regulated to.
Right, and these massive towers are basically like 200-story slums is what they are. Yeah. I mean, Dredd casually mentions that there's 96% unemployment rate there. There's drugs, there's crime. I can only imagine that disease and sickness in that cramped of a space is just rampant, and I can only imagine like that there are hardly any resources to effectively treat those people and provide them medical care, provide them educational services. So this is just like this is a horrible place to live, and yet it's given the name Peach Trees.
That's the irony of it. Some brilliant writing there by Garland.
But this breakdown and reorganization in society we see in the film, there's really left no middle ground for any sort of conflicting morality. You are either a judge or you're a criminal, and there's no middle ground really anywhere in the film.
No, it's very, and I think that's why Anderson is so pivotal in this movie and why her character is able to kind of change how Dredd is. I think you mentioned she's essentially, what would you say, telepathic? She can read people's minds. She can figure out what people are going to do and say. She can go in and cause people to make bad decisions and screw with you. And so she's this rookie that is kind of, I wouldn't say she's the moral compass of Dredd, but she kind of changes him along the way. She doesn't wear a helmet. She lets people go that Judge Dredd would say, what? Because this whole thing is her assessment, her first day. And, she's like, oh, I failed. At one point, she lets someone go, the pimp, Mama's pimp, that she ended up taking out his eyes and cutting off his balls. He's like Mama's slave and the IT guy. And she lets him go because she saw, oh, he's already suffered enough. We don't need to kill him. And Dredd's like, but that's an automatic fail. But her doing that changes who Dredd is as a character, and we find out at the end, he learns.
It's great that she's able to impart some empathy onto Dredd in not any sort of profound way, obviously, but just this tiny sliver of that's implanted in his mind of saying listen, if everybody's a criminal, then no one's a victim. And there's always victims to take care of.
Exactly. And I think that's why this movie shines a bit, because it doesn't beat you over the head, but these characters do change, and they change. It's a little change, but they change nonetheless, and it's a great build-up and payoff at the end. as opposed to something that's just so profound and long where we get it. We're like, all right, Johnny, we get you're an alcoholic and you're struggling with making the right decision. Jesus. But sometimes it helps having these black and white characters.
No, but you're right about the build-off, too. I mean, because we see these dominant personalities that typically emerge in a post-apocalyptic world that rise to power and stature, and we see this sort of Batman and Joker type of clash with Mama and Dredd. And,
oh, yeah.
And to borrow a phrase from The Dark Knight, it's an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. I mean, we know that Dredd is going to do his thing, but it seems like Mama always has an ace up her sleeve to try and kill Dredd and Anderson. And it's great to watch, like, oh, well, you're going to do this. Well, guess what? I'm going to bring out 3 miniguns and just totally blow away the entire floor just to try and kill you.
That was such a good scene. Speaking of that scene, how did you feel about all the special effects and everything? Because the camera angles and, for example, the drug slow-mo is very bedazzling, I would say. They really lean heavy into the slow-mo, Matrix-esque style, but I felt it wasn't too much where I was getting pissed off.
No, it's used just enough to where we understand what the drug does, but it's never used to any sort of prolonged effect throughout the film. I mean, we see it in the beginning when Dredd is chasing down the tweakers in the van, and Mama is messing around in the bathtub and trying it out in the apartment. So we see it 3 times in the first, I don't know, maybe like half hour or so, but then that's really sort of it.
Yeah.
And then it comes around once again when Dredd throws Mama out the window, but it's like you said, we're never subjected to any sort of prolonged slow-mo sequence.
Yeah, they primarily keep it with the drug. And that's tough because I think as a filmmaker, when you have such a cool sequence that you devise for this film, that's probably going to be, in my mind, that was the big takeaway from this movie. If I was watching it artistically and see, wow, what ground is this film breaking? I could definitely see other directors saying, well, in the action sequence when Dredd is running away from the machine gun, we should do slow motion explosions, and then we should do another one here when he's punching. But no, they just primarily utilize it for the drug, and you never get bored of the sequence.
No, I mean, otherwise, besides the slow-mo sequences, the action is very fast-paced, and this is one of the few films that we've discussed in doing this show where I can honestly say that the action is nonstop in this film. There is always something happening and always something to take away from the scenes.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's good action. Everything has a purpose. They don't waste your time with like Fast and Furious or, some action films where, well, let's just have them fight. No, because they have to get up to the top floor where Mama is. So every decision they make, unfortunately, because they're being attacked, includes action, but it has a purpose. Getting to the next level, progressing the characters emotionally. And I'm not a big, you know me, I hate boring action or meaningless, pointless action. But I definitely agree. This film, nonstop, and has an A in my book.
I mean, yes. I mean, at some point, the action does get ridiculous. I mean, it's when Mama reels out the 3 miniguns and tries to kill everybody. But when you understand the nature of the source material and find that something like that would be very in line with what we would see in a Dredd storyline, well, then it's just like, oh, okay, well, awesome. That checks the box,
Yes, and it's a comic book. So essentially, if you think of the film as a comic book superhero film, that's when all the bodacious, crazy things that start happening action-wise, that's when it all starts to make sense, at least to me. Because when I watched this with mi madre, she was like, oh my gosh, at some parts. I said, but you got to remember, this is a comic book film. It's R-rated, but it is a comic book movie.
But there's so many people that die during that sequence, and it's a reminder once again in this film that this is a very cruel and unforgiving world for the non-criminals and the non-judges of the world. I mean,
oh yeah.
The homeless man is crushed by the blast doors near when Mama locks down peach trees. And like we mentioned earlier, the name Peach Trees itself is a misnomer, and even the people that are killed in the opening scene, when that last tweaker is running through the mall or whatever, those people are just swept up for recycling by automated robots. It is horrible to watch.
There's a total disregard for life and humanity.
But this is a world that's in addition to that disregard, there is this almost apathetic quality to the population where this violence is so commonplace that there isn't a police presence that shows up to check on dead bodies. There's no doctor. It's just an automated robot it's basically a human Roomba to clean up a dead body.
It really is. It's so sad to see that. Do you think could this be a cautionary tale movie? That we have the potential to get to this as a society?
We asked a similar question like this when we were watching RoboCop. Could we see crime get this bad to necessitate a need for, a judge or any sort of like Hall of Justice type situation? And honestly, I don't see it. I don't see it trending towards Dredd, like what we see with people being apathetic towards violence and just accepting it as commonplace, because I'm just going to say, like seeing dead bodies in a public place, like, should not just be accepted. Like, that's not cool.
Right? There's a lot of things we get desensitized to in this country, but I never want to live in a world where, okay, there's Uncle Joe. Whatever. Nice knowing him,
Oh, yeah, Uncle Joe was shot by a tweaker in the mall today. Bye, Uncle Joe. It was nice knowing you. Yeah, right. I don't ever want to get to that.
Good Lord, no.
Well, and I think we're more trending towards RoboCop,
yes.
Like a world where drugs and crime and corruption could get so bad where we militarize the police force, but nothing like Dredd where police officers, prosecutors, and judges are all consolidated into one role. That just seems very far-fetched to me to imagine in my lifetime.
Hopefully we never see it, because with even military police, there's always the corrupt ones, and we definitely see corrupt judges in this film, because judges are supposed to be the apex of morality, right and wrong, black and white. But even Mama, her ace in her hole, or her second card that she draws is judges to kill Judge Dredd, and she pays them 1 million credits to do it.
Well, right, and I think the reason why having the corrupt judges work is because we have black and white characters like Dredd and like Mama. We have two sides of the coin where we have justice and upholding the law, and then we have murder and mayhem and running a criminal enterprise. And then throw in there we have different shades of the coin with the corrupt judges, with Anderson, with the techie who ultimately is let go at the end of the film. So it's weird shades of gray going on in the film against the black and white characters.
Absolutely. Because Anderson's history, I think she was an orphan or something, if I recall. Her parents died, and then the Mama was a prostitute, and she ended up getting scarred up by the pimp that Anderson ends up letting go, because the pimp actually ended up cutting up her face, and then she bit off his genitalia, took out his eyes, and took over the empire. So even Mama's character, you almost feel some compassion for how she became this evil villain, because she's just trying to sling it. Survive on the street, make some cash, and then her dude just roughs her up, and she finally reaches that breaking point. These characters are very gray outside of Dredd.
Yeah, but there is something to be said about Mama rising to the literal top of peach trees and this criminal enterprise and keeping all of these men under her thumb. Did you notice any women henchmen in Mama's clan?
None. There wasn't any. She was the only one.
They're all men, and I think her past and her damage has taught her how to control men and to take what she wants. And I'm not saying this is like, oh, all women do this. I'm saying this is like, hey, good for you. Like, you keep thousands of people under your thumb, and there's no other women in your organization. Like, awesome. Props to you. Like,
She has dominated masculinity. She is. Yeah.
and Lena Headey is great as an actress. She has an amazing history of playing these strong, powerful women, and Mama is certainly a feather in her cap if we're going to look through the annals of Lena Headey's career, because she's also played Queen Gorgo in 300, Queen Cersei in Game of Thrones. So she has a great knack for playing these intimidating, strong female characters.
She does a hell of a job all the way till the end when she's thrown off the top balcony.
Oh, that death is 1,000% brutal, like Brightburn level brutal.
Yes, because they, spoiler, I guess. Well, it's doing spoilers, but they kill her, and the camera angle, because I haven't seen this film in a long time, and Dredd gives Mama slow-mo, and then it's just the slow motion fall, and the camera angle when she splats, you just see her face smash against the ground and just explode with blood. It's just such a brilliant visual trickery and aesthetically so pleasing. The fact that how they pulled that off is just so incredible. Just beautiful payoffs with this film.
I want to ask you this, though. I mean, did you ever feel like Dredd was in any sort of real danger at any point in the film?
So the only time that I ever felt that he was in danger was when he runs out of ammunition and he's facing the other judges, and then he actually gets shot the through and through. And I hadn't seen it, and I went, really? Is he gonna die? And then Anderson takes over, but then no. He just was stalling for Anderson to kill the other judge. So that was the only moment where I felt that Judge Dredd was out of his element, but he never did. It was all part of the plan.
No, I agree with you. That scene in the drug lab where he's going against the other corrupt judges was amazing. It's well shot, and when he runs out of ammo, it's just, oh my gosh, like you said, is he really going to die? Is Dredd, this ultra badass, going to die in this awful, horrible way without any sort of backup?
Yeah, and he does it, but he plays it so well. He tells him to wait before the guy shoots him, and even the other judge can't believe it because, I'm sure Dredd is hailed as one of the best judge there is, so the guy just mocks him. But it was all under his plan. Thank God Anderson didn't die.
Right. I mean, and we do see, after that, we see Anderson let the techie go, and then Anderson is just going through the rest of the film thinking, well, I failed anyway, it doesn't really matter. And then that small bit of empathy creeps back to Dredd when he grants her an exception and lets her become a judge.
Yeah. Because Anderson initially fails, for the folks listening at home. She fails the entrance test, I think, by like 3% or something. So she's right there. She's almost ready to be a judge. But he passes her anyways. And I think Anderson actually, when she realizes that she failed and it doesn't matter anymore, her character changes from being this person that's ferrying around this criminal, the, I guess, drug manager, higher up pimp dude, and once he dies, she kind of starts to unfold as a character, and you see her kick some serious ass and shooting up people. It's like, whoa, she's taken off. Maybe it's because she doesn't care anymore, so she just says, screw it, I'm gonna do what I do.
Yeah, I think that switch is flipped is a necessary step for her character to take, because we really finally see her be able to execute criminals on the spot and finally just let it go and unleash the inner judge, I guess.
Yeah, and she kicks some serious ass, man.
Do you want to ask you like a hypothetical here? How do you think the rest of Anderson's career as a judge unfolds?
So I was thinking about that when she leaves. I think she needs more experience in the field to not get shot. But I think she would be right up there with Dredd, because so while she's not as physically powerful as Dredd, she has that special weapon of telekinesis. So she can always know what people are going to do and screw with them mentally while being a badass physically. So I think she's going to kick some serious ass. She just needs more training. But I was hoping, that we would get more movies with those two because they make a hell of a duo.
Yeah, the psychokinesis she displays in the film. I mean, looking at it through our modern lens, I think it kind of messes up the idea of due process a little bit. But again, this is Mega City 1. Clearly, due process does not exist in Mega City 1. So they just...
That's very true. I didn't think of that.
And not what? I mean, only once in the film does Dredd mention doing any sort of paperwork.
No, they do. You're right.
And I can only imagine the amount of paperwork they have to do after, we literally destroyed 15 floors of peace trees and there's 1,000 dead bodies. There's so much paperwork to do.
Right? So once again, we get another movie about police and we never see them actually doing the police work. That's so funny. Maybe one day.
But I think Anderson would have an easier time moving on to a post-judge life, whereas Dredd is somebody who would be incapable of doing that. I think if he does eventually die, he will die as a judge, and he won't have the opportunity to do anything else with his life.
Oh, totally. I totally agree with you there. He is born a judge, will be a judge forever. It's like people you meet where you say, oh, they were totally meant to be police officers. Yeah, I can see Anderson going off and living a nice, happy, quiet life with a cat or something.
And even if Dredd did make it to a post-judge career, I think he would be heavily messed up from his time as a judge. He'd be self-medicating, have to have years of therapy, but there's also the added comfort he can slink into anonymity since he never takes off that helmet.
No, he never does. Which was brilliant. He could do some slow-mo.
This is the way. This is the way. Don't take off the helmet.
Yeah, that's how you survive. So the drug in and of itself, slow-mo. Did you see anything bad about the drug other than that it makes life go really chill and slow?
Yeah, no one mentions just how addictive slow-mo really is or what exactly makes it illegal. Like we're not stripping off matchstick heads and putting it in there, or it's not made out of battery acid. If all it does is slow time down for the user, how is it really an illicit substance?
Right? It just makes things colorful.
I mean, if that's what we're basing it off of, we can make the argument that a really good cheeseburger is a drug.
Right? Hey, there you go. Well, some people may say that with fast food. It's poison.
Yeah, but we don't outlaw cheeseburgers, so there you go.
Because they're delicious.
But I think the slow-mo is really sort of this allegory for our marijuana's place in society, because now we're seeing this trend of states in the United States and also other countries kind of move away from this decades-long demonization of marijuana and really embracing the health benefits of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's shocking to see how far we've come as a nation. In my high school, most of my lifetime, marijuana was illegal, and now finally, thank God. Thank you, Colorado. Thank you for being so chill to understand, hey, maybe this isn't so bad after all.
But there's also a lot of things that we have to consider in the wake of legalizing marijuana. Banking laws have to be reevaluated as to how, dispensaries are impacted, as well as reviewing those stupid mandatory minimum sentencing laws that have negatively impact certain groups of our population.
Absolutely. And plus, even on the legal law enforcement side, the whole police has to revamp how they do drug testing and how they would reinforce a DUI, essentially. There is some big changes that's going to have to come, but hopefully all for good, because there, like you said, there's a lot of people that are in jail for things that they shouldn't be, or they should at least be pardoned and have their lives back, because the sins of the fathers shouldn't be their fault, just because our nation wasn't on the boat like New Amsterdam. It took them so freaking long to finally realize, I'd rather smoke a joint than take oxycodone, to fight back pain. What's better?
Yeah, my line of thinking with that is like if there is a pedophile in prison doing less time than somebody who was busted for marijuana possession, there's something wrong with that picture.
Amen to that. And it's not like where, I mean, I'm in the military. I can't smoke weed. But I'm just saying, this is like, I think it's an important topic and something that's, really good to discuss. Who would have thought slow-mo would bring about a pro-marijuana?
Yeah, this line of reasoning is evidently lost in the film of Dredd, but this is a world of law and order and fighting the chaos that threatens to engulf it.
That's right. So, anything else that jumped out at you during this? Oh, how about let's go into our red shirts.
Yes.
Tons.
Well, who is your red shirt, Sean?
Oh my God, my red shirt was probably the medic. So that gets brutally murdered by the judges. So this medic, he's there. He notices the 3 bodies. He witnesses the murder and all this, and then the judges, the fake judges that are hired by Mama, come in, and they look at the ground and they say, and they're scheming. They say, well, maybe it was just a drug bust that went wrong. And then this medic guy, who's just trying to do his job, he's a good person, shows up. He said, no, judges, I saw the whole thing. It was actually, they were thrown from the top. And then the judge just like freaking shoots him. You stand by that? Poof. I'm like, dude, you're just going to murder a guy that's like, he's just trying to live and do his job. So I felt really bad for that guy. He was my red shirt.
Well, that goes back to that scene where the doctor locked him out of the med clinic, really the only place they could reasonably hold up while holding Kay as a prisoner, and the doctor turned them away, and Dredd really kind of gives him the ringer, saying like, by doing this you effectively have picked a side.
Yeah.
Like you're pretty much condemning us by not helping us.
Yeah. And then he gets the one over.
Yeah, he tries to make up for it and do the right thing and gets murdered for it.
So brutal. How about you?
I've got my red shirt for the film was Mama's henchman Caleb.
Oh.
So I think it seemed like he was pretty smart and one of the only henchmen in the Mama clan that she really liked, and Dredd just threw his ass down the shaft to prove a point to her.
That's right. I forgot about that. That poor guy.
just threw him down saying, I'm still here. You didn't get me. Now I'm getting one of yours. Bye.
Yeah. He shows how tenacious he is. And then she, I guess, maybe taking her top guy. I'm coming for you. Oh, Dredd is so much. I would say he's the new age Dirty Harry. This film, if anyone that's seen the Dirty Harry with Clint Eastwood from the 70s and 80s, he is totally Harry Callahan in my book. Just the way he talks, his attitude, and he's totally Dirty Harry.
Go ahead, make my day, hotshot.
I know. I was waiting for him to say that. Well, he kind of does that at the end. How do you plead? Defense noted. It just throws her over the edge. Carl Urban, I love you, man. What about?
Did you?
Yeah, go for it.
Did you have a lens flare, Sean?
Lens flare. I don't believe so. Nothing that I saw in this film bothered me in any way that I was pissed off. So no, I had no lens flares this time.
Well, I had one. We were talking about the use of the slow-mo effects throughout the film, but there was really only one time where it really bothered me, and it was the scene where Dredd and Anderson are breaking into the apartment to bust up the meeting and pretty much kill everybody that was there. And the slow-mo effects are great in the film, but we see people when they're getting shot, they look like they're standing in front of an air cannon. And it's like, okay, like this is not how bodies behave when they're shot. This is how they look when they're standing in front of a leaf blower, but not when a bullet enters soft tissue.
You know what? You are right. And then just like how blood would explode out of their body, they get hit in like the stomach where traditionally there isn't many arteries down there, and it's just poof. A big like wave of blood just exploding everywhere. Oh, that scene's so
if there's
silly.
one thing we learned after watching Dredd is that human beings look like they're being hit with leaf blowers when they're shot, and they're also filled with about 80 gallons worth of blood.
Right? It's like watching a Quentin Tarantino movie. Jesus Christ. Oh, brilliant. Lens flare away. So, I guess that's everything. Let's move into the legacy. So, this film, Judge Dredd, while we loved it, unfortunately, I guess a lot of people didn't love it. It had this budget of estimated between $30 million to $45 million, but the box office gross was only about 41.5, unfortunately.
Right, but I also remember that this film was very poorly marketed at the time. Like I cannot for the life of me remember seeing any sort of trailer for this.
No.
And only became aware of it after it had come out on home media and checked it out from Redbox.
Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe because it is like a superhero-esque, but maybe because 2012 was a busy year for movies, particularly the Avengers came out, or Dark Knight was out, The Dark Knight Rises, so maybe it just got overshadowed at the box office.
I mean, that's very possible, but in order to promote a film like this and make sure it's successful, studios have to do their part, and I'm amazed that it's considered a disappointment, because I also read up that it made up about 80% of its budget just in pre-sale distribution rights alone. So there was a chance for Dredd to make some money at the box office, but it was just absolutely mishandled by the studios.
Yeah, that sucks. That sucks because, yeah, like you said, it's made so much in home media, all that. It's made $20 million since it's been out of theaters. I wish it had done more. Because with that, the future's kind of been murky, to say the least. I know Carl Urban says he would like to come back. A lot of people want to return, but nothing's happened so far.
Right. There was a lot of rumors of behind the scenes turmoil. Like Pete Travis was actually prohibited from participating in the editing process. With Alex Garland, actually, he took over editing the film, and Carl Urban even remarked as recently as 2018 that Dredd should actually be considered Garland's directorial debut.
Oh.
And despite the critical ratings, I mean, this holds a 79% on Rotten Tomatoes. There's a 60 on Metacritic. There has been no word as to whether or not we're going to get a sequel, at least on the big screen. But that's unlikely given the box office numbers. But there have been a lot of rumors about a potential series on either Netflix or Amazon Prime.
Oh, well, I could see that. I mean, it would be a hell of a show. I'd watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I think to call this a box office disappointment is a huge disservice to this film. I just think that if this came out in 2013 instead of 2012, this would have done a lot better. Because 2012, like you said, was just a busy year at the box office. There's all these rumors of behind-the-scenes turmoil and directors and producers, fighting it out over the editing process. Granted, I'm still hopeful a sequel will happen, but there's been no real concrete news since 2017, so it's difficult to say if or when we will see a sequel or a continuation of this story.
I agree. I wish they would. I think Carl Urban crushes the role, and I definitely I would love to see more adventures of him and maybe training new rookies and all that. Maybe that'll be the TV series on Netflix. Carl Urban gets his new rookie killed. Judge Dredd, right? You just see every episode another rookie gets blown away.
I actually do think that this would be perfect for a video game sequel or just a video game reboot in general.
Totally. It feels like a video game, this movie.
I can totally picture this as this sort of open world crime fighting game where Dredd is getting on the law cycle and with the lawgiver gun and just busting up crime all over Mega City 1.
That would be a fun game. You just respond to police calls all the time. Dush, dush, dush.
Right. I mean, you would have some story, but I mean, if you build a massive open world and fill it with, side missions and crime to bust, I think this would be a very great game to play. I mean, I would certainly buy it and enjoy it.
Hell yeah. It would just be, there would just be a fun game. You do first person, third person, online, battle royale. There's so much that they could take with this character. And there's so much to pick for his comic books to make a storyline. So that's a good... Yeah, if you're listening, IGN or whatever gaming communities are out there, make a Judge Dredd game. And just...
Rockstar Games, if you're listening, option Judge Dredd to make a video game. Just saying, you won't be disappointed.
Won't be. Just maybe throw us like a royalty or something for giving the idea.
Right. Let us have a cameo in the game. Yeah. Well, thank you profusely.
That's all we want is a force-fed sci-fi podcast like cameo. That would be awesome.
So with all of that in mind, Sean, let's rate Dredd, shall we?
Let's do it. We shall.
So on our unique scale for the force-fed sci-fi podcast of wouldn't watch, would watch, would own, and would host a viewing party, what do you give to 2012's Dredd?
What do I give to 2012's Dredd? So this film is by far and none for me. You better put on the Judge Dredd helmet because it is a viewing party, baby. I love this film. I love Carl Urban. I love all the performances of all the actors in it. The direction is great. Cinematography, writing, character development. It's short, sweet, to the point. The film feels like a video game. The sequences are awesome. Nothing ever gets tiring to me, at least when I saw it. And everything's just building. It's fast-paced. It's exciting. This is a film. This is an action film that I always talk about that I love. This is my action. If I'm going to watch a film, I want something quick, but there's setups and payoffs. So for me, Judge Dredd is awesome. I recommend it to anyone to watch it as long as, if you're not 17, have an adult with you or whatever. But otherwise, enjoy it. It's a must-see in my book. How about you, Chris?
This is actually a really, really fun film to watch. And everything meshes together really well. There's the dynamic characters, the different shades of morality we see, and I think it helps to know what to expect going in. And one shouldn't expect any sort of deep character development because you're not going to get it. You're going to get just enough for it to be noticeable and palpable and recognizable. But the action is great. It's fantastic. And this is an amazing adaptation of the original source material. And Judge Dredd is now such an iconic character, and the world he inhabits is intricate, it's dirty, and it's crime-ridden, and the only response to it is a tough-as-nails, badass cop who's going to put everyone in their place and go accomplish his mission. And because I enjoy this film so much and remain ever hopeful for a sequel, I am calling Dredd would host a viewing party.
Aha!
So I will join you. I will join you in wearing that Dredd helmet and wearing whatever sort of Cursed Earth Mega City 1 appetizers we can whip up for a Dredd viewing party, because I am 100% on board with that.
Sweet. Yet another agreement between Sean and Chris. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, we've had a good string in a row of films where we absolutely agree on, and like I have to say, like this is one of the films in our list that we've covered so far that I have just 100% thoroughly have enjoyed watching.
Amen to that. Same. So, with that, folks, it's time to consult our friendly number generator, Major Samantha, to pick the next film on our list. Chris, take it away.
Yes. So from our list of 118 films, Major Samantha has selected number 68. It is a film from 2009 starring Ethan Hawke and Willem Dafoe. It is Daybreakers.
Another Ethan Hawke film? What? Sweet. I'm ready for it, man.
Well, that'll be our film for next time. Please watch and enjoy with us. And if you enjoyed today's show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. It really helps to drive us up the charts as well as help people like you find the show. We are across the spectrum of social media with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at ForceFed Sci-Fi. You can check out and download episodes from Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you find podcasts, and go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Finally, you can check out our website, forcefedsci-fi.com, for show notes and links to all of our social media. So for all of us at the ForceFed Sci-Fi team, we will see you next time. ForceFed Sci-Fi is written and hosted by Sean Culp and Chris Rupp. Website design, associate producer, and editing by Jeremy Keski. Artwork designed by Mike Berger. Theme music composed and performed by Custom Anthem.